Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Wyrock. And in today's episode, we're talking about lies. In particular, we're asking, what can we learn from the Biden cover-up? Of course, here I have in mind the idea that President Joe Biden, towards the end of his term, was in significant cognitive decline, and that those around him hid that from the general public. Now, this is prompted by an op-ed piece I read recently in the Wall Street Journal, but the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece was in response to an upcoming book by Jake Tapper of CNN called Original Sin, and it's looking at this massive cover-up of President Biden's cognitive decline. What the Wall Street Journal op-ed piece says is that they now know that multiple high-ranking Democrats and media members knew that President Biden was in significant decline and hid it. They hid it in two ways. One is by not talking about it. It should have been a major story that the sitting president of the United States was in such poor health, especially mentally, but also by casting aspersions on anyone who did raise the issue. One example that Original Sin, the book by Tapper, brings up is that George Clooney, the famous actor, was hosting a fundraiser for President Biden in California while he was campaigning. And at the event, President Biden did not know who George Clooney was, leaving aside the fact that they are friends and that Clooney had been a longtime financial supporter. George Clooney is also one of the most famous actors in the world. And when Clooney realized that President Biden didn't know who he was, he actually wrote his own op-ed piece, I believe in the New York Times, saying that President Biden was not doing well. And he was skewered by the media, who told him he was overreacting, was making too much of anything. He was damaging the president. What the Wall Street Journal and the Tapper book the point they're making is not only there was a massive cover-up, but by hiding this from America, it kept President Biden from opening up the Democratic primary and possibly allowing someone else other than him to run. So how should we think about this as Christians? Well, there are a couple things I think we can learn from this. The first is that truth really should be and really is the foundation of leadership. This is the point the prophet Zechariah makes in Zechariah 8:6 when he says to speak the truth to one another. Healthy families, healthy organizations, healthy countries thrive on the truth. President Biden should have been telling the truth. To do so would not just have spoken to his integrity, it would have bolstered the confidence that Americans have in their government, whereas the opposite, lying and obfuscating, actually diminishes the truth. This is also a reminder that leaders should be servant leaders. Leaders exist for the good of those they're leading, not the other way around. This is what Jesus was saying in Matthew 20 when he said, whoever wants to become great must become a servant. President Biden made it about him wanting to hold on to the presidency. Or it might be more fair to say that those around President Biden made it about them. As long as he stayed in office, they stayed in the limelight and in power. This is something we've got to fix in our country. Leaders thinking about themselves instead of about the good of people that they are leading. This is also a reminder that accountability can't be avoided. Even if you, quote unquote, get away with it while you're president, there's always a book coming. And even if there's not a book coming, judgment before God is. Paul tells us in Romans 14, each one of us will give an account for our lives. Lying makes sense because we think we're not going to get caught. But the presence of an all-knowing, all-seeing, all-just God reminds us we are already caught because he sees and he knows. I can't help but say also, though, there's a lesson here about what healthy families do. President Biden's family wasn't thinking about him. They were thinking about themselves. They were thinking about maintaining their grip on power. So now, as a result, history is going to remember President Biden, among other things, as the president who lied about his health, who covered up his cognitive decline, and who actually hamstrung his party in the national election. So in the end, the family actually damaged President Biden by not encouraging him to be truthful, by not putting him in a position to maintain his integrity. It's a reminder that power, money, influence, these things can become idols to us. They can become the most important thing. And Jesus told us in Matthew 6, you cannot serve both God and money, or God and power, or God and influence, or God and yourself. So while we're right to criticize President Biden and his family, we should also point that finger inwardly and ask, in similar circumstances, would we value other people, or would we value ourselves? Let's learn from him and care more about others than about ourselves. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Wake Up, Look Up. If you enjoyed it, please help us get the word out by sharing it with someone you think might benefit from it. And while you're here, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get further content, or even download the CCC app, where you'll find even more resources to help you grow in your faith and relationship with Jesus Christ.